Today, we continue our series on Tara Brach's Radical Acceptance. And I want to give a shout out before we start again to those of you who are showing up on Wednesday night to do a little deeper dive and some guided meditation uh, in the middle of the week on Wednesday nights. It's a powerful group that's getting together. There's a lot of sharing. There's a lot of us. I think opening space for healing from each other as we share each other's stories. There's really this sense of truly connecting and realizing that as we get stuck, or as we try to work our way out of this trance of unworthiness, we are not alone in this. So many of us share, and what fear tells us is that if we tell each other our stories, if we share openly, if we let people know how we are struggling, they won't love us as much. So we keep this to ourselves, and we walk with this heavy burden, and we struggle. And when we share, the load is made lighter, and we realize that others are on the path as well. So I do want to invite you at the top of the talk here to consider joining us on Wednesday evenings, 7 p.m. All the info is on the Zoom info is on our church's webpage, unityontheriver.org, and we take a deeper dive. If you've seen the talk and read the chapters, great. If you haven't, still great. Just come join us, because the discussion applies regardless. And then we do some meditation practice, some of the guided meditations from the book. But today, as I said, it's part 3 of this series where we speak about the radical acceptance as the path to awaken from this trance of unworthiness that we find ourselves in. That trance of unworthiness is this ongoing feeling that we're not good enough. And it makes it difficult to not only just trust others, but trust ourselves, and trust that we are loved and lovable, because we're not good enough, and people will reject us if they find out the truth about us. But radical acceptance begins with accepting everything about ourselves and our lives, and I really mean our inner life. This is an inner process of acceptance, accepting our present moment experience for what it is, which is basically an invitation to look and see where those wounds that we've been carrying around unhealed for years and years and years, we can finally begin to direct some love and healing work towards them. Radical acceptance is framed in this context of mindfulness and compassion, mindful of the moment to moment awareness of what's happening within us, and compassion is that capacity to relate to ourselves with tenderness, with sympathy. We're not beating up on ourselves for feeling the way we feel if it's a feeling we don't want to have. And as we covered last week, the first step of this is the sacred pause. This idea that rather than get hung up in our usual strategies of how do we make ourselves feel better when something is going on that we don't like what's going on, we stop, we pause, we breathe, we turn within, we disrupt those habitual behaviors, because then it allows us to say yes to the experience of what's happening, and really look to see what's causing the feelings around what's happening right now. Because remember, there's nothing outside of us that's happening to us. Okay, it's only how we react to what's happening. And our reactions vary based on the lens through which we see the world, based on those earliest childhood wounds or traumatic experiences that has happened over our lifetime. And until we really do the challenging and loving work to heal those, we get stuck in this trance of unworthiness. So we have the sacred pause. That's the first step. And then we check in, beginning with our body. This is the ground of radical acceptance, our body. She writes, we experience our lives through our bodies, whether we are aware of it or not. Yet we are so usually mesmerized by our ideas about the world that we miss out on much of our direct sensory experience. In other words, we kind of assign meaning to what's happening based on thoughts, beliefs, history, instead of really asking ourselves, well, what really is going on right now? And we do this habitually. It's like second nature to us. We don't even realize when we're doing it. But when we take the moment to pause, we can become aware of what's happening in our body instead of getting lost in reaction or judgmental thoughts. Our body often tells us what we are feeling before our mind does, right? So, for example, we may not be aware that we're angry about something, but we feel our body tense up, and there might be a pressure in our chest. We may not be aware that we're feeling afraid, but suddenly there's knots in our stomach, or our throat is constricted, and we're even having trouble breathing or even speaking. We may not be aware that we're feeling the burn of shame, but our body tells us. There might be a shoulder slump. Our face might literally be burning. We might feel this need to literally hide somewhere. Our body tells us, truly points the way towards the feelings that are arising within us. And we need to be mindful, to pause, to watch, to listen to the body. The Buddha says that mindfulness of the body leads to happiness in this life and the fullness of spiritual awakening. Let me say that again. Mindfulness of the body leads to happiness in this life and the fullness of spiritual awakening. We just can't think our way to spiritual awakening. We just can't feel our way to spiritual awakening. We've got to get in touch with what's happening, what's really happening within us before we can begin to transform it. Otherwise, all we're doing is layering all the different spiritual teachings and practices and all these things that make us feel we're awakened, but we just layering it on top of the underlying issues that we haven't resolved yet. I'm sure if you think about it, you know a lot of so-called spiritual people that are like walking around really angry or really afraid, or like, I thought this person was supposed to be spiritual, or worse, we turn it on ourselves and go like, I've been on this path for so long. I've been doing all this work. Why am I still reacting this way? I must not have done it right. And we beat up on ourselves. That's where the compassion part comes in. It's not that we've done anything wrong. We've just been layering and not healing, truly healing, because we may not have taken the time to stop, listen, and sense what's going on in our bodies to truly tell us how we feel, and to open up that invitation to make the difficult journey of realizing where that wound is, what that wound is, and how we begin to heal it at the deepest level. Part of it is our aversion to pain. We are pain averse people. And you've heard this saying before, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. What does that mean? So again, the pain aversion that we all have, and let's not throw anybody else on the bus. I'll speak for myself. I don't like to be in pain at all, not even physical pain. I'm one of these people that I get a paper cut and it's the end of the world. So I don't even like to be in physical pain, but forget about being in emotional or even spiritual pain. Don't like it. Part of it is that we have decided that pain is wrong. Because it's uncomfortable, it's wrong. If it was the right thing, it should feel good, right? No. We make pain wrong, but here's the thing about pain. Pain's not wrong. Pain is just pain. Pain is just pain. And she says in the book that maybe the reason we think it's wrong is because it's very closely associated with loss. When we lose things, when we lose people in our lives, it hurts. And we don't like how that feels. Grieving hurts. This whole nation has been in collective and individual grief for the last year. Lives that have been lost, countless lives because of the virus. Even those during the last year who haven't lost anyone specifically to the virus, but just lost people. That loss has been compounded by this collective energy of loss that we are experiencing. And we feel it more acutely because, again, how we have responded to the pandemic, we can't just generally go out and do all the things that might help us feel better, which I think is a good thing, because a lot of those things, half the time, if you admit it, they're just trying to cover up the feelings, trying to hide the pain, distracts us from the pain. But here's the thing: the moment that we believe something is wrong, or we react to the pain we feel with fear, we lose ourselves in the effort to fight the pain, and then we slip back deeper into this trance, which leads to suffering. If we accept pain without the confusion of fear, just acknowledge, notice there is pain, but not be frightened of it or assign a meaning to it or make it wrong, then we can really listen to its message and respond from a place of clarity. Let me give you a real life example in my life. A few months ago, let's say about November-ish, I started to feel very uncomfortable. Like my whole body was tense. It was like, I didn't know what it was. I couldn't name it. But I realized when I paid attention, when I paused and paid attention to what's happening, where am I feeling, when am I feeling it, I began to realize that I felt it most acutely when I was watching the news, and they were reporting about the vaccine development and rollout. As they were sharing news about the vaccine the trials being successful, and it looks like before the end of the year, we're going to have a vaccine and it will start to begin to be the end of the pandemic, I noticed my body just getting more tense, more anxious. My blood pressure started to go up. I was losing sleep. And y'all understand, I don't lose sleep for nothing. Like, I famously slept through a tornado touchdown less than 2 miles away from the house I was at. Like, I don't sleep. I don't lose sleep. But I was losing sleep, and I was like, what's happening? Like, this is good news. But the more time I spent in the pause with the pain and listening to where it was taking me, it took me to a place that I struggled to accept, but eventually had to, because otherwise I wasn't going to be authentic to myself. As we began to have these vaccines roll out, and the talk of the beginning of the end of the pandemic, and talk of within a few months, maybe sometime, we'd be returning to our in-person activities, I realized that meant church as well. And it made me realize that given how we've been doing church the past year, I was not wanting to return to normal, traditional Sunday morning in a building church experience. I struggled to accept that this was no longer mine to do. And it eventually led me to the decision to realize my time here at Unity on the River as your minister is coming to an end. This church is very clear that it wants to be a church that meets as community in person together on Sunday, and have that experience, which is perfectly okay. But it's no longer mine to do. And trust me when I say I struggled with this. This community has been a lifesaver, a balm. When I came to you, it was at one of the most difficult times of my life and my daughter's life. Within 6 months of arriving in this community, my wife passed away, and we're still on this journey of healing and in the grief from that. And this community was a safe, soft place of love and compassion. You were there for me in one of the most devastating times of my life. And we've had some fun times. We've had some challenging times, or as I like to call it, we just had good old church over the few years that I've been here. But I had to admit that this is where my journey was taking me. And at first I thought maybe it's just me not wanting to come back to Unity on the River. I said maybe that's what it is. And as I was wrestling with those thoughts, interestingly enough, my previous church, Unity of Gaithersburg, their minister announced that she was stepping down. And they shared a few weeks later that they were going to go through like a 6-month period of with an interim, and then think about summer of 21 opening up for people to apply. And I was like, ooh, maybe that's what it is. But as I spent more time with that as well, my body did not feel any less anxious or any less stressed. That wasn't it for me either. I had to listen to what my body was telling me because my mind refused to hear this truth that I was being directed towards. I had to accept where I was and what I was feeling. Earlier this week, I let the board know that I would choose May 1st as my final day of being your minister. I wrote them a letter that fully explained why and all the reasons. And at the end of this service, you open your email inbox, you should find that letter there as well. Take a few moments to read it. And if you're watching on Sunday morning, take a few moments to read it before joining us for hospitality. I'm sure it will be a fascinating hospitality. And I'm open to all your questions. I'm open to, if you want to have some one-on-one discussions around this later in the week, whatever, please reach out to me. Please also take advantage of the time that Martha Creek is here, having these community dialogues to share with her in that safe space around how you were feeling. Part of what got me here was the realization that this pandemic for me is not just an interruption, that we go back to just the same things we did before. No, this was a disruption of how we do life. And disruptions send us on different courses and different pathways. And I have to honor where I am being led. I'm not worried about Unity on the River in my absence. I think you guys are going to do great. I think you guys are going to do even better than when I was here, because you're clear about who you are. And the board is very clear. In the next few months, we'll be working together to figure out those next steps so that it's a seamless transition after my departure. So I'm going to invite you right now to check in with yourself and your body. And how does your body feel right now with what you just heard? What are you feeling in your body? Are you feeling tension? What are you feeling? We're going to go into meditation a little bit, and that's really where I want you to focus. Let's put this into practice right now, because these talks are not just here for entertainment or inspiration. These are practical teachings. And this is a practical, real life example of some of you hearing news you do not want to hear, or you don't like to hear, or you wish you didn't have to hear. But how perfect it is that we're in the midst of a book study. And I promise you, I didn't plan it this way. I did not plan it this way. Decided to use this book months and months ago. If you remember, I forget what last series I did, the spiritual partnership. I said, yeah, this will be the next book. And that was way before Advent. But when one is in the flow and listening, that divine inspiration, that divine wisdom, that divine knowledge comes forth and guides you. So it was no accident that I was guided to this book that's been sitting on my shelf for decades to be the book that we use now. I needed it to come to this place, and you need it as you process what you just heard.